welcome to the African Development Bank Group's financial presentation and launch of the 2025 African Development Effectiveness Report. This indeed is a marquee presentation and event, one of the most attended actually at the annual meetings of the bank. This is the very first time in a very long time that we've held the event in the evening. It's usually an afternoon event. Many years ago, I remember when Hasatu Nsele was treasurer, she used to treat us to some very lavish and delicious lunch, but it must be a sign of the times. We went from not having lunch at all to now moving the event to the evening, so it's still a mystery. But anyway, to everyone who's here tonight, we just want to say thank you very much for taking out of your busy schedules to be with us. It's been an evening of, or a day of, intense activities, lots of events, with many, many more to come. But we do thank you. I think I'm going to shift to this microphone. Hello. So it's been a very intense day, and this was programmed to be a little longer than we're actually going to make it, but because we're starting pretty late, we are going to be very concise and move at the speed of light. My name is Victor Oladokun, and it's a pleasure to MC and to moderate this event this evening. As always, this is one of my most favorite events at the annual meetings. Ahead of us, we have a very robust panel discussion with our senior executives, vice presidents from different complexes who will be sharing with you their thoughts, their retrospections over the past years, and the opportunities ahead of us. But right now, I'd like to ask that we kindly turn our attention to the screen for a very short Annual Development Effectiveness Report video presentation produced by the bank's ADR team. Turn your attention to the screen, please.
Africa's journey over the past decade has been one of remarkable progress and resilience in the face of challenging circumstances. A global health crisis, economic turbulence, rising debt levels, and extreme weather patterns. Throughout this journey, the African Development Bank Group has stood with the continent, turning challenges into opportunities and laying the foundation for a more inclusive, integrated, and prosperous Africa. In 2024, our investments delivered tangible impact. 1 gigawatt of additional electricity generation capacity was installed across the continent. 14 million people accessed better healthcare. 3.5 million benefited from improved transport, and 1.3 million gained basic ICT services. And $5.5 billion were mobilized in climate finance across Africa. The bank also strengthened its thought leadership, publishing the Measuring the Green Wealth of Nations report, which advocates for incorporating Africa's natural capital and ecosystem services into GDP calculations. These achievements build on a decade of steady momentum during which we have worked hand in hand with our partners to touch the lives of more than 560 million people across the continent, including over 250 million women. Over the last decade, 28.4 million people gained access to electricity thanks to projects like the Last Mile Connectivity Project in Kenya, which has connected over 2.6 million people and 5,335 small businesses to electricity, unlocking new opportunities for women and youth. 12.8 million farmers are now using improved and climate-resilient technologies thanks to projects like the Africa Emergency Food Production Facility, which boosted cereal production by more than 37 million tons across the continent. Over 121.2 million people now move more freely across Africa thanks to projects like the Fofoso-Saula Road Corridor in Ghana, which has opened vital connections to neighboring countries like Mali and Burkina Faso, strengthening regional trade, mobility, and opportunity. 62.5 million people also gain access to clean water, supported by major investments like Egypt's Gabal El Asfar wastewater treatment plant, the largest in Africa. And across the continent, millions of jobs are being created thanks to projects such as Nigeria's Indorama plant, which is now producing 1.5 million metric tons of urea fertilizer, driving agro-industrialization by transforming the country into a major exporter. These are just a few results of the more than 5,700 projects transforming lives across the continent. Visit our Map Africa platform and see the bank's impact firsthand. Here, you'll find the results management framework of our new 10-year strategy, providing everything you need to know about the bank's work and its impact across Africa. It's about transparency, a core value of the African Development Bank Group, recognized as the world's most transparent organization in 2024. Curious to know more? Explore this year's Annual Development Effectiveness Review or dive into Map Africa to see how we are turning data into action and vision into change. We are the African Development Bank Group, Africa's Solutions Bank. In Africa, here to make a difference.
Data into action and vision into change. I love that line. I want to say a very big thanks to Amand Nzeyimana, Director of Development Impact and Results, and to his hard-working team for an excellent video showcasing impact at the bank. And if you've never visited the Map Africa platform on the website, I encourage you to do so. I believe that the cards that are available in the room, you should be able to get that. Is that right? Do we have the promotional cards for MAP 2.0? If you've never visited the site, it provides in very, very detailed form information about almost all of the projects that the bank has invested in over the years. It's a very powerful tool, so you should take a look at that. So thank you very much to you and to your team for putting that together and keeping an updated dashboard on the bank's effectiveness and impact. Well, that's a perfect segue for us this evening to open up this session with a formal short opening speech. The Senior Vice President of the African Development Bank Group, Marie-Laure Akin-Olugbade. As she comes forward, I know we haven't had dinner yet. Please give her a very, very warm round of applause.
Excellences gouverneurs du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, mesdames et messieurs les ministres, distingués invités, chers collègues, partenaires ici à Abidjan et vous qui êtes connectés en ligne, bonsoir. Permettez-moi avant tout propos de remercier très sincèrement le gouvernement de la République de Côte d'Ivoire et particulièrement Madame Nialé Kama, présidente du Conseil des gouverneurs du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, pour le soutien constant et appuyé qu'elle nous a apporté tout au long de l'organisation exemplaire de ces assemblées annuelles. C'est un honneur et un très grand privilège pour mes collègues de la haute direction et moi-même de nous adresser à vous ce soir pour passer en revue une décennie de transformation, comme éloquemment illustré dans la courte vidéo que nous venons de visionner. C'est une décennie au cours de laquelle la Banque africaine de développement a assumé pleinement son rôle, celui de catalyseur et accélérateur de développement, de partenaire stratégique et de porte-parole de l'Afrique. Let me now proceed in English, just to stress that the last 10 years have been truly transformative. From 2015 to the end of President Adesina's mandate, the bank would have approved $102 billion in operation, nearly half of all the bank's approval since its creation. Disbursement rose to record level, with 45% of our historic total delivered just in the last 10 years. The pace of delivery, which is 4 times faster than the previous decades, signal not just scale, but also intentionality, innovation, and impact. During this period, the bank has evolved from a financing institution to truly a platform of knowledge, of ideas, and transformative leadership. At the heart of this shift, you've heard it this morning, you've seen it in the video, are the high 5 strategic priorities: light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life for the people of Africa. Together, these high 5 have really shaped the investment that we have delivered over the past 10 years, and they have reached 560 million lives. And this is not just in terms of financing, but it's so in terms of re-engineering systems. And for us, I think you've heard a lot already about some of the impact, the outcomes. But I would like to just pause here also to emphasize that at the heart of our results are the African countries themselves who are driving this transformation. They are implementing projects. They are making the bold investment that turn ideas and support from partners like the bank into lasting impact for the men, the women, and the young people of this continent. And the countries are also in the driver's seat when they undertake very courageous reforms, including strengthening governance and deploying African solutions to economic and climate challenges. We also pay tribute to the people of this continent, the path and the ingenuity, the resilience that they have shown in the face of external shocks to the reform that they have undertaken, not to satisfy external partners, but to meet the aspiration of the African citizen. And we pay tribute also to the ambition that drives Africa toward inclusive and sustainable growth. The Development Effectiveness Report that we will unveil this evening is more than a record of the bank's achievement. It is a reflection of real, measurable, and lasting impact on the daily lives of millions across the continent, which has been achieved through very strong collaboration with our regional member countries and partners. The year 2024 was a milestone in itself. It marked the 60th anniversary of the bank. It was the first year of our new 10-year strategy. We approved $11 billion in investment, including a record $5.5 billion for climate finance. The co-financing reached $3 billion, and private sector investment, so important, so critical, increased by 36%, reaching about $2.2 billion. And disbursement rose as well. It's one thing to approve projects, it's another one to make sure that we disburse. And it is disbursement that makes us reach the beneficiaries that we are trying to serve. Disbursement rose by 15% to reach $6.4 billion, which translates in real impact, as you've heard from President Adesina, a very emotional speech this morning. Our net income rose to $480 million, and we continue to lead in transparency and accountability. We were ranked #1 again, globally for the second consecutive year in 2024, ED Transparency Index. In 2024, governors approved $117 billion increase in callable capital, bringing the bank's capital to $318 billion. And we have also successfully launched several initiatives to expand our lending headroom. My colleagues will give more detail on these. At the global level, we are also contributing to reshaping the financial architecture to make it more inclusive and one that serves Africa in more in fairer terms. And really, as we reflect on what we've achieved, we want to also look ahead with renewed purpose, with a sharper focus. And for us, we want to be able to scale, of course, what works, but we must stay very bold, and we must remain grounded in the realities of our people. And this is why our new strategy is intentionally grounded on three very defining transitions. The first one is the demographic transition. The second one is a green transition, and the third one is a digital transformation. And so this evening is more than a retrospective. It's really an opportunity for us to, yes, recognize the remarkable progress that has been made, but more importantly, the work of African countries themselves. They have reformed, they have led, and they have delivered for their people. For us, we want to continue to remain a partner that listens before we lead, a partner that aligns with the national priorities and we amplify local solutions, and we want to remain a partner at the side of African citizens. And for us, Africa's future will not be imported, it will be co-created on African terms with African leadership and the African Development Bank standing firmly alongside. Thank you very much for your attention.
Let's give Marie-Laure Akinolugbade another round of applause there. We're going to launch immediately. Thank you very much for that very quick tour de force of the bank's operations in the past 1 year. Thank you very much for joining us. Up next is our panel discussion with several key members of the bank's senior management team. Not all of them, but most of them. Please welcome to the platform, of course, once again, Senior Vice President Marie-Laure Akinolugbade. Please take a seat. Hassatu Nsele, Vice President Finance. Nena Nwabufo, Vice President Regional Development, Integration and Business Delivery. Beth Dunford, Vice President, Agriculture, Human and Social Development. I just want us to pause for a few moments. And I want to make a very bold statement and say that in the history of all MDBs and DFIs, at any annual meeting, this is the very first time that you're seeing women leaders on the platform representing senior management at this level. I don't think it's ever been seen before. And I think it's just a further testament and testimony to the bank's commitment to ensure that Africa develops on the wings of both men and women. Yes, there's a tremendous amount of success happening at the senior management level, but all of that is also trickling down. And for that, I'd like for us to give management and the board a round of applause for that. Our women leaders will be joined by Kevin Kariuki, Vice President, Power, Energy, Climate Change, and Green Growth. And also Solomon Quena, Vice President, Private Sector, Infrastructure, and Industrialization. And last but certainly not the least, I guess it's because there's a double whammy to his titles, is Kevin Urama, the Vice President, Economic Governance and Knowledge Management, as well as the bank's Chief Economist. I guess with all the seats gone, I think I might have to relocate all the way to the end, but that's actually a perfect seat to engage each and every one of you personally. I like what Mary-Laure said a few moments ago. She says, as a bank, we listen before we act. And I think that's quite appropriate for us in leadership. As a wise person once said, and I like to reference that, the most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and to be understood. And that, the best way to understand people is to listen to them. So this evening, over the next few minutes, I'd love for us to listen to our panelists, to again gain a better understanding of what it is that we do as a bank and how that impacts millions of people on a daily basis on our continent. So my first question goes to the Vice President of Finance. Money is always important, but we still need an explanation for the lunch or for the dinner that never happens. The African Development Bank has been at the forefront of several financial innovations, and you've led many of those. And that's been the case for quite a number of years. You've been pioneering groundbreaking transactions like the hybrid capital as well as synthetic securitization. Now, these initiatives, each one of them, unprecedented in the multilateral development world, showcase the remarkable ability of the bank to innovate, as well as to shift some of its assets off of its balance sheet. How effective has this been? What has the impact of that been over the years?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can I repeat?
Yeah. Okay, you asked us to be very quick. So $12 billion, does that speak to you?
That's a large number.
Yes. So this is through the various innovations that the African Development Bank has done over the past 10 years, we've been able to unlock close to $12 billion. And for the African Development Bank, innovation is not a luxury. It is a necessity, because the financing need of the African continent far exceeds the capital that is available. And in recognition of that, we had a very deliberate approach in order to use financial innovation as a strategic lever in order to extend our reach, but also deepen our impact. So our financial model has evolved. And we used to rely a lot on shareholders' capital, on traditional funding for MDBs, but with the evolving needs and very complex needs of the African continent, we needed to have a reset. We needed to be much more agile. We needed to build the the type of instrument, resilience instrument, in order to be able to mobilize the private sector scale, but also increase our lending capacity. So then comes the balance sheet optimization. That was the way to go for us. I'm sorry.
Would it be safe to say that that's become part of the bank's DNA, financial DNA?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's part of the bank's DNA, balance sheet optimization. Actually, we've gone from a lend and hold approach into a dynamic balance sheet management, where basically, we are creating room to run. And I'm saying room to run because that is the name that we call the pioneering transaction, the first synthetic securitization ever done by an MDB. And we made waves in financial markets, and we basically laid the ground for the originate to share model, which is something that DG20 is talking about a lot. So from hybrid capital, from synthetic securitization, we've done hybrid capital. We started with a relative, and I'm not being cocky, but it's a relatively small transaction, $750 million, some kind of a pilot for us, but it did unlock about $2 billion, and there is much more to be done, going forward. So basically, when we look at the resource mobilization strategy of the African Development Bank, we don't wait for conditions to be perfect, but we endeavor to create them.
And what kind of opportunities and challenges do these innovations create? Opportunities and challenges.
So, opportunities and challenges. So I want to highlight, one historic, the historic approval of the transformation of the African Development Fund into a highly rated entity that can, access resources from capital markets. This is truly historic because it opens a new chapter in how we can increase the volume of affordable resources for low-income countries and for fragile states. And it's really, it is a story that will be told, in the years to come. Because basically through that mechanism, we will be in a position to provide resources that are equivalent, almost equivalent to what we receive from all the ADF donors at each ADF cycle. And before I talk about challenges, I want to talk about the African Investment Forum,
Sure.
which is, again, so it's the same, mindset. It is the same shift into, how can we do more for the continent? So it was conceived by by President Adesina, and it's a reflection of joint commitment with key partners on how to provide a platform that is going to mobilize the private sector at scale, but that is also going to create a vibrant investment ecosystem, de-risking and mobilizing billions of dollars for the continent. And I mean, there are just so many of those, and it will,
I
don't
just want
to
you
take
to
too
leave
much
some of
time.
it left so that we can still come back to you.
Okay, but in terms of challenges, I would say that it does take time to, to conceive, to structure, and design financial innovation. And what I found is it takes as much time to convince people that this is the right solution internally and externally as well. But you need to take the time to do it.
And I know that I'm wrapping all of my questions into to one session here, but I just want to, again, pivot into what you're talking about here. SDRs, the IMF FDRs, was another financial innovation. And I recall that at the time, there are lots of people in other NDBs and in the financial world who said it would never happen. How did it happen?
It hasn't happened yet.
I know, but it's been
we're
approved.
on our
It's
way.
been approved by the IMF board.
So basically, hybrid capital was the thing also that people said would never happen, actually, and it did happen. And hybrid capital, some people said, oh, it should not be the African Development Bank; it should be a larger bank. But we're able to, to demonstrate that it could work. And the SDR, it's a journey. It's a journey that requires also some of our shareholders to embrace innovation the way that we've been asked, MDBs, by the G20 to embrace innovation. So first of all, we have a solution that works because the IMF staff has indicated that the solution that we've put together, maintains a reserve asset status. Basically, it means that any country can lend to an MDB and its reserves and still continue to account for this as being part of the reserve. So that was the first check mark. The second check mark was when the IMF last year approved the use of SDR for hybrid capital. So second check mark. And now what we're looking at is getting the required number of countries to be part of this. So it takes a lot of convincing, and it's no, I mean,
we're on our way there.
If you look at the current context, this is really the best. I mean, it's like this was created for this moment, because basically no impact in terms of fiscal space, a multiplier impact in terms of development, but also there is no. I mean, it's the best solution, and we'll keep on speaking with the stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Hassatu Nsele. I'm going to come next to Solomon Kweda. Now, the African Development Bank is known as Africa's infrastructure bank. It's invested more in infrastructure on the African continent than any other organization in the world. Now, this seems to be one of our very distinct comparative advantages, and delivery over the past year seems to confirm this. Now, in terms of financing, how has this impacted, for example, cross-border infrastructure projects across public-private partnerships, as well as private projects? What are we seeing in that space?
I hope you can hear me well. Okay. No, thank you very much. For the question. I mean, very clearly, for those of you who were at President Adesina's speech heard today, you know that in the past decade, we've actually approved, the board has approved.
Could you speak a little bit louder? Could we just bring up the volume, please?
Okay.
Yeah. Can we bring up the volume in the back,
Sometimes I'm worried that with my voice, if I speak louder, that I will send all of you out of the room. But I'll give it a try.
The loudspeakers there are safe. Don't worry.
No, so for those of you who were at the opening session today, you know, President Adesina took us really, you know, through a retrospective. And one of the things he mentioned is that in the past decade, we've done $55 billion of board approvals in the infrastructure space. That spans energy, transport, water, telecoms. And, you know, what even magnifies it a lot is the fact that this, if we look at it nominally, represents over 50% of what we've done as an institution and infrastructure since our inception. So definitely we live up to the name. We are the infrastructure bank. However, there have been some developments, you know, in this last decade that has really moved the needle. What I would say is that AFDB has not just been the infrastructure bank, but we've moved beyond that to being really the party that helps the continent plan, finance, and deliver infrastructure. Now, one of the ways in which we've done that is we've moved away from simply looking to finance, you know, a discrete number of assets to actually trying to address the root cause of the infrastructure financing gap. And we all, you know, often say that there is money, however, there are no bankable projects. So we've begun to actually build institutional platforms, you know, that are really efficient and effective in delivering, bankable projects. So let me just talk very quickly about 3 examples because, you know, there's a graduation in the examples that would also send the point that we've reached really the inflection point, and I do hope the hockey stick would actually come into play and we would further reduce this infrastructure gap in Africa. So the first example is the NEPAD Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility, primarily to prepare regional or cross-border projects. 6 different donors, you know, Canada, and I better be careful to remember all the donors because we are very thankful to them. Canada, Germany, Spain, the UK, Denmark, and also Norway have contributed a total of about $160 million, just a little over that, for us to really do project preparation for regional infrastructure projects. Now, I'm going to give you really a measure of leverage, which I still have been checking the numbers all day because I can't believe this. However, based on our analysis of cross-border projects that have reached financial close, for every dollar of project preparation, we've been able to generate downstream investments of $357. Now that is what we call leverage. That's what we call catalytic. Okay. Now, during the last 10 decades, once again, if you were in the opening session, you heard President Adesina talk about Africa 50, which, you know, at the beginning of the last decade was just really design on paper. However, this was really the creation of the first institutional infrastructure project development and investment company in Africa, dedicated to Africa. Africa 50 has become really the premier infrastructure project development and investment institution in Africa. You know, with about $900 million of capital, it's, you know, closed 21 projects across 23 countries, and it's, you know, the total value of the projects have been $6.6 billion. Now, this is not just scale, it's also with speed, because I just told you that it's happened in the last 6 years. Africa 50 has a very strong pipeline, you know, and they also have, you know, redesigned the approach by putting different verticals within their business. So they have the project development vertical, they have the, project finance vertical, but now, for example, they have an infrastructure acceleration private equity fund. They also have a mezzanine fund. They also have a distributed renewable energy, fund. So once again, they are building really, the capacity to continue to do with speed and scale, infrastructure project development, so financiers will be able to invest in those projects. Now, the last one is very forward-looking, and really I'm excited about it. And my good brother here, Kevin, myself, and Alain Ebubise, under the guidance and vision of President Adesina, worked to really design and develop this. And this is the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa. For me, this is very forward-looking and really demonstrates where we're going to get the hockey stick, because the idea is to create a contestable market for infrastructure project development. Infrastructure project development happens really at the local level, but we want to pair up experienced developers with local developers. So this, sometimes people think it's an Africa 50 vehicle. No, the idea really is to create a market for project development so that financiers can really, with speed and scale, follow, bankable projects, and actually will begin to have that hockey stick and inflection.
Thank you very much. Quite a lot's happening in that space. I'm going to come next to Kevin Urama. I was going to shoot you a question about the African Economic Outlook report, but you dealt with that earlier today. So I'm just going to shift focus here and ask about how the bank has very tangibly supported economic governance during the period, not just of the last year, the last 10 years. What's your take on that? How are we supporting countries in this regard?
Thank you very much, Victor. As we heard today in the launch of the African Development Outlook report, governance is everything. And the bank has been accelerating during the past 10 years its support for economic interventions across the continent, in fact, covering all member states of the continent. The bank has done about $16 billion in support to member countries to address different areas of economic governance, from domestic revenue mobilization to strengthening the public financial management systems, curbing illicit financial flows, but also strengthening supreme audit institutions and rule of law in these countries. And this amounts about $1.4 billion every year. And I have to say, really, congratulations and thank the board and the president of the African Development Bank, because support for governance is something that many talk about but not take seriously. But in this bank, we are doubling down on that economic governance on the continent. And we're seeing results. We see from the World Governance Indicators that since the year 2020, African countries have done very well, growing gradually but steadily in addressing a number of all the governance indicators, except for political stability and the absence of violence. On all the other indicators, whether you look at Mo Ibrahim Index or look at the World Development Indicator, World Governance Indicators, we're seeing a gradual but a steady increase across the African countries. But again, another point to make there is that when we zoom in to the countries that has been supported across the continent, we see very rapid improvements in most of the governance indicators. The public financial management assessments, called the PEFA assessments done recently, shows that many of these African countries where the bank has been intervening has improved significantly in domestic revenue mobilization, in budgeting and budget management, but also in prudential borrowing. Now, specifically in this country where we sit in Cote d'Ivoire, we have seen significant improvements as well. The bank has approved 8 interventions in this country over that past 10 years. And we've seen the governance, the World Governance Indicators and the Mo Ibrahim Index raising the ratings of this country to one of the highest in the continent in terms of improvement in governance. And as we said in the annual AEO report, when you see improvements in governance, you see an equivalent increase in per capita incomes. You see increase in infrastructure. You see increase in all the key drivers of growth in countries and the quality of lives of people. And you just have to travel around in Abidjan to see for yourself the impacts that the government of Cote d'Ivoire, I have to really say, congratulations to them for applying themselves to this sector of development, which actually changes everything. Because when you have governance right, then it's like an accelerator for all the other things that the bank does in terms of financing hard infrastructure in countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very well said. I'm going to come to Nena Wabufo next. Over the past decade, Africa has experienced and gone through tremendous challenges, but it's also seized many opportunities. So as you reflect over the journey so far, how has the bank stepped up its support for regional member countries, and in what ways has that support grown in scale, in depth, in reach, and results?
Thank you very much, Victor. Yes, over the past decade, Africa has gone through some major challenges.
You might want to speak directly into the microphone. There we go.
Yeah, over the past decade, Africa has had many challenges. One of them we know very well is the COVID-19 pandemic. And we do recall that for that pandemic, that with the support of the bank shareholders and our executive directors, senior management working under the leadership of the president, we created the COVID response facility to support our countries. We also had the food crisis that came as a result of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And with the support of our board of directors, also under the leadership of the president and senior management and staff working together, we also created the emergency food production facility to help African countries. So there's been challenges. In addition to that, in the past decade also, we've seen a lot of challenges coming out of climate change issues. And we've seen countries move from drought situations into flood. We've seen things like desert locust invasion, fall armyworm invasion attacking agricultural products. So it's been a challenging time. But the fact still remains that the bank stepped up its engagement and created innovative ways to support our countries. In 2015, exactly, the bank's total outstanding loan portfolio was about $34 billion. As at the end of last year, the bank's total outstanding portfolio was almost double at $62 billion. And if we count the 10th year of 2015, I'm sure we'll more than double what it was in 2015. In last year alone, the bank's total loan approval was about $11 billion. Out of that, about 25% of it was in regional integration. And as we know, regional integration creates opportunities to integrate and build a much stronger Africa. We also, last year, we disbursed about $7 billion. So you can see that the bank has stepped up its engagement. But I'll just give you a few examples of how much we have stepped up engagement in a few of the countries. This morning, President Azali of Comoros had mentioned that the bank was the country's #1 development partner. But when we take it into figures, in 2015, our total outstanding loan portfolio in in Comoros was $30 million. As at today, that portfolio has grown by over 800%. We are at 260 million. 260 million may seem small, but for a small island country that started from 30 million 10 years ago, that's a lot of money. Last year alone, out of this 260 million, we approved 175 million worth of projects for Comoros, which means that we tripled our portfolio last year alone. Let's look at Rwanda. In 2015, our total portfolio in Rwanda was 440 million. that portfolio has grown today by 550%. So we are actually at about 2.4 billion today with Rwanda. Let's look at Benin Republic. In 2015, from the Benin Republic, we were at 370 million. That portfolio has grown by 400% as at today. Mauritania. In 2015, we were 207 million. That portfolio has grown by 300%. Madagascar, we were 400 million. That portfolio has grown by 260%. Togo, we were at 182 million. It's grown by 250%. And we heard the Vice President of Tanzania also speak about the much impact that we have made. Tanzania in 2015, we were about 1.85 billion. We have doubled that portfolio today. So I'm just giving you a few examples, concrete development, that despite the challenges that we have been through, the African Development Bank, we have, through the support of our donor countries, through the support of our rating agencies that have maintained our AAA rating, through the hard work of senior management and staff, under the leadership of the president, we have risen up to the challenge of supporting Africa through this difficult time. And as we celebrate our successes, we are looking into the future. We are looking into the future where we are going to work smarter, where we're going to work faster, and where we're going to continue to bring the required innovation to support Africa through these trying times that we are in. Thank you.
Now those are really massive numbers and stories worth telling. They're definitely numbers worth celebrating, huge impact numbers. And I just wanted to give the bank and also the VP a round of applause here. Just really, really impressive. This is what it's all about. The question to ask, or the way to flip it, is to say, what would have happened in those countries if the African Development Bank was not active in there? It would be a totally different story. Well, during the presidential dialogue this morning, Ghana's President Mahama said, the first responsibility of any government is to feed its people. Well, in tandem, the fact is we can't talk about making Africa's capital work better for Africa's development without mentioning, I think, the lasting impact of the bank's co-organized Dakar 2 Food Summit held in Senegal in January 2023. We had, I believe, almost 40 presidents and heads of state at that event. It was unprecedented, and it attracted tens of billions of dollars in commitments towards building food sovereignty across Africa. I'm just a little bit curious here. That was a little while ago, a little over a year ago. What has happened since then? What is it that we need to know about what's happened in the ag space across Africa on account of the bank's support?
Well, thank you for that question, Victor. And Dakar 2 was truly a watershed moment that really, I think, put on full display the convening power of President Adesina and the African Development Bank. Again, bringing 37 heads of state and government together. They came with their leadership, with their commitment to putting resources and their own time into transforming agriculture in their countries. And so since that time, the bank itself has improved $5 billion, just in the short time since 2023, $5 billion by the end of this year to support these country-led food and agricultural delivery compacts that came out of Dakar 2. So again, these were, heads of state and government coming with their own plans to transform agriculture, leading boardrooms, and out of that came, investment. And the African Development Bank and the partners, the president today mentioned that we were able to garner support, totaling about $72 billion. And again, the bank is already moving forward on that very, very quickly to implement that on the ground. So as part of this, we're investing in increasing production. I think we can all agree that it's no longer acceptable for African farmers to have yields that are a third of their counterparts globally. So there's been a huge focus on investment of bringing improved state-of-the-art technologies to the African farmer. This is through the Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. Again, making sure that the latest seeds, right amount of fertilizer can reach farmers to help them reach their full potential. And again, this is something that's we're really pushing out through all of our programs. And just to give an example, for the African Emergency Food Production Facility, where we were able to really push out these technologies, we were able to reach 13 million farmers, as the president said today. And I think the slides were saying that it helped to produce 37 million metric tons of food, but the data is coming in so quickly for the results of this program that's growing so exponentially. We're actually at 43 million metric tons of food produced, which is worth $17.8 billion. So again, that's huge impact at scale, just really getting technologies to farmers so they can do what they do best, and that's produce food and reduce, very, very critical vulnerability to dependence on imports, and be able to produce that food here at home in Africa. So just here in Cote d'Ivoire, through the Emergency Food Production Facility, focusing on maize, Cote d'Ivoire was able to produce a record 600,000 metric tons and have very impressive yields, 5 to 8 metric tons per hectare. Again, huge success in a very short period of time. So in addition to focusing on agricultural increasing production, there's also been a focus on value addition and processing through the special agro-industrial processing zones. Again, we've invested with our partners $2 billion in 27 zones across the continent. So what this does is it provides the infrastructure and support to companies to come in, lower the barriers to entry so they can more easily set up and invest in this value addition and processing that we need to really strengthen value chains in Africa. So why is this important? It's important because right now Africa is exporting raw goods. Most of the agricultural commodities that it exports are raw. Just to focus on cashews, because we're in the biggest cashew producing country in the world, and my kids love cashews, so I spend a lot of time procuring cashews, so I know a lot about it. It's not uncommon in Abidjan to go into the store and find cashews that were grown here in Cote d'Ivoire and sold for $1 or $2 per kilo to Vietnam for processing, and then shipped all the way back at $20 per kilo so that I can go buy it in the grocery store for my kids. That's value, that's jobs, that's profit, that's exported, and we need to keep that here. Just a few countries over, I'm going to stick with cashews. In Benin, the Arise, the LLP, started a special industrial processing zone around cashews in Golo-Jibe. And again, they were able to take, in a few short years, since 2021, they've been able to take a country that only processed 10% of its cashews in country, take that up to 45%, up to 75%, and they're going for full processing of cashews in the country of Benin. So just last month, the board of directors approved $100 million investment in Arise LLP so they can do a similar SAPZ here in Cote d'Ivoire and also in Nigeria. So again, these are the types of investments that we're supporting, we're pushing across the continent to really ensure that we can focus on that value addition. I think I'll leave it right there. Thank you very much.
We'll come to you in a second question, but again, a round of applause for the excellent work being done by VP Beth and her team. Amazing stuff, amazing. Last but certainly not the least, I'm going to come to Kevin Kariuki. Now, since the launch of Mission 300 in Dar es Salaam in January, there's been a lot of buzz about this Africa Development Bank, World Bank initiative that brought in other partners. I'm just really curious again, what has happened? We galvanized not just the public sector, there were presence in attendance, the private sector. What are some of the highlights that have come out of Mission 300 since January? I know I asked that question earlier during the presidential dialogue, but I just want to get a little bit granular here with you. Bring us up to speed on where we're at. What are some of the highlights? And how does that fit in with the bank's interventions with similar initiatives, particularly within the last 10 years?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor. I think the last bit of your question is very helpful. Is very helpful in trying to understand where we've come from. So over the last 10 years, the bank has made concerted efforts to accelerate increased access to electricity. As Mr. President mentioned in the morning, we have been able to provide electricity access to 28.4 million people in Africa over the last decade. And the best way to explain this is to give examples of projects that have delivered this. Mr. President also spoke about Kenya, where our interventions have provided 2.6 million access to 2.6 million people, including 5,300 small businesses, providing significant opportunities to women and the youth, including reducing pollution, as well as improving security. And in addition to that, similar projects, this has resulted in increase in electricity access over one decade, from 32% to 80% currently. Similar projects in Rwanda, last mile connectivity projects, have resulted in increased access from 12% 10 years ago to 75% to date. And this year, last year alone in 2024, we were able to provide increased access to another 1 million people over the last 1 year. But since 2019 to date, we have been reporting that 600 million people in Africa do not have access to electricity, which means that any gains that we have or we make in providing additional access is negated by increased population. And as a result, and it doesn't get even any better, because ominously, the projections are that if there's nothing, business as usual remains the same, what will happen is that by 2050, we'll have an additional 900 million people without access to electricity. So obviously, this is not a tenable position. And of course, we can conclude that business as usual is not working. And this is what informed the announcement, or what we call Mission 300, by President Adesina and President Bang of the World Bank to commit our two institutions, the African Development Bank Group, as well as the World Bank, to provide electricity access to an additional 300 million people by 2030. In other words, address 50% of the existing electricity access deficit in a short period of 5 to 6 years, which is incredible. So this is a bold ambition. But so what have we done, as you asked, since the event in Dar es Salaam in January? So one of the things that we did, actually this was before January, is that we defined the 5 key principles that would underpin any bespoke country energy compact in anywhere in Africa. So after defining those 5 pillars, we also developed and unveiled 12 energy compacts for the first cohort of 12 countries that we worked with. But then what we also did, we have also started the co-creation of an additional 20 energy compacts over the present period. And lastly, and most importantly, what we are also doing is to ensure that Mission 300 has been adopted by the G20 to the G20 level. But in summary, what we are doing in Mission 300 is to accelerate and to complement ongoing electricity connectivity projects, including programs such as the Desert to Power, which is an initiative of President Adesina's vision, as well as the green mini-grid connections that we are doing for distributed renewable energy access. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you very much, Kevin Kariuki. Part of the deal we had behind the scenes was that each of your interventions would be about 3 minutes long. I think we've been going over that by quite a margin. But what I'm going to ask as we take we're not going to be able to take more than 2 questions, I think. But again, very impressive results, excellent work being done on behalf of the bank in representing Africa, supporting Africa, really, really impressive. But what I would like to ask is that if we can keep our final responses to 2 short minutes. I'm trying to get us out of here latest by 8:30. I know a lot of people haven't had dinner. We started very, very late. So kindly work with us on this in this regard. I'm going to come back to Hassatu Nsele. In 2024, the bank had a remarkable year financially. What are some of the key factors for that, different from other years, but really, really remarkable improvements?
Let me answer the question differently. So the African Development Bank has truly come a very long way, with an authorized capital of more than $318 billion, with more than $75 billion, $80 billion raised from capital market over the past 10 years, with award-winning transactions, with and that I need to highlight, and my treasury team is here, that the African Development Bank remains the largest MDB.
It's 2 minutes.
Yes, that you interrupted me. The largest MDB issuer of social bonds. We have a balance sheet of $57 billion. We have unlocked $12 billion of additional capacity through financial innovations, and more billions to come. We've got a profit of $2.7 billion over the past 10 years. And let me pause here. We do not make profit on any of our sovereign loans. All our loans to our sovereign clients are made on a cost recovery basis. And the AAA rating of the African Development Bank, which has been reaffirmed, is one of the reasons why we're also able to provide loans at very attractive costs. So I need to highlight that. So the performance, the $2.7 billion, is mainly the treasury portfolio, our equity, our investment, and our private sector operations. And you know, I mean, these are numbers, but you've heard about the impact from Marie-Laure earlier and from our colleagues here. So you know, resources are le nerf de la guerre.
Thank you very much again for impressive numbers. I just like the way Hassatu does it. You know, she's reeling off these numbers, but it's just not that she's reeling them off. She does it with a swag. I like that. I like that. I love the swag and I love the passion. I'm going to come next back to very quickly to Kevin Kariuki here. There's been quite a bit of talk about the possible establishment of an African single electricity market. My question is the bank in any way contributing towards this goal? What are we doing?
Thank you very much, Victor. I think one of the key requirements of the establishment of the Africa single electricity market is the creation of intra and inter-regional power interconnection projects. And here is an area where the bank has absolutely excelled. If you start with West Africa, we have what we call the CLSG, which is the Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea interconnection project. This is 1,300 kilometers long. Then we also, during the last 10 years, we also brought into operation the Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and Senegal 1,700 kilometer 220 kV transmission line. At the same time, we built we built the Kenya-Ethiopia interconnection highway, which is 1,050 kilometers long at 500 kV, and also the Kenya-Tanzania interconnector, 510 kilometers long at 400 kV. These projects become vital arteries of the West African Power Pool or the East African Power Pool, and together they are already facilitating trade through bilateral arrangements of $1.3 billion every single year. So in that case, with these projects that we've created, and in addition, other projects that are also in the pipeline, such as the 300-kilometer, 400 kV Uganda-South Sudan line, then we'll be able to create the grids that will underpin the power flows across Africa in the short term. For example, I'll give the example of through that interconnection and the ongoing construction between Tanzania and Zambia, we will be able to connect the East African Power Pool with the South African Power Pool and facilitate trade between all the way from Cairo to South Africa. I'll stop this.
Thank you very much, Kevin Kariki. I was just wondering here, is that work, does it hinge just primarily on infrastructure? Are there other requirements to help deliver the African single electricity market, other than just the infrastructure?
Yeah, thank you very much. There's what we call the soft part of the business. And these soft skills include the market skills that are required, the regulatory environment that is required, and also the platform, the power trading platform that is required. And here, what I would sort of make it, to make it easy, it's like the operating system and the software that is required to ensure that you operate your computers. And here I can say that the bank has done an incredible job, especially with regard to the East African Power Pool. We provided, firstly, the support to establish the independent regulatory board that was actually commissioned 2 months ago. We also provided the funding for the SCADA and the management information system that is required to do the data capture, control, and ensure optimal operation of the power system. But most importantly, as part of the soft skills, we also provided the resources that enabled the shadow trading to be able to ensure that the people within the East African Power Pool Secretariat and the utilities have the capacity to be able to perform the actual trades. We actually expect the East African Power Pool to go live this year.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent there. We'll come to Solomon Kwena. The bank is very passionate about the youth. President Adesina has been exceedingly passionate about the youth, as well as women. And as we've heard quite a bit, even here, just within the last 12 hours, our youth are our greatest resource. That's just the way that it is. Now, given the number of youth that are coming into the workforce every single year, yes, we've done quite a bit in helping them develop skills. But what I want to transit to is what we're doing as a bank in terms of supporting youth entrepreneurship banks, YEIBs, Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, to accelerate investment among youth and youth-owned businesses.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Victor. I mean, Hassatu said something at the beginning, which is really one of the things that attracted me to joining the African Development Bank. She said innovation is a necessity. It's not just good to have. So likewise, President Adesina always used to tell us the story that, you know, when he was Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, he used to hear about empowering youth, you know, and he didn't even understand what that meant. And then maybe during the political cycle, you know, some monies would be brought, dashing youth, and that would be the end of it. So one had the opportunity to actually go into what I call AFDB's Innovation Lab, to come up really with a solution that would really support youth entrepreneurs. Now, the 4S's is something that we all hear as the criteria by which an innovation passes the test, and it better not be inframarginal. I mean, that's a word we constantly hear. And the 4S's are that the solution has to be structured, it has to be systematic, it has to be scalable, it also has to be sustainable in terms of financial sustainability. So you have the opportunity to really innovate, but it's got to meet those criteria. So we went through a process. We even hired, Dalberg as advisors, and we came up really with the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks. Please, it's not a bank. There's no deposit taken. This is a question that comes up. But what we tried to do was really look at the points of consistent market failure in terms of access to the right type of financing for youth entrepreneurs, as well as building their capacity. And so the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank is really a series of funds. An early stage equity fund, because sometimes we make the mistake of providing debt when the need is equity or quasi-equity. A latter stage credit guarantee fund, because a lot of times youth businesses are asset light. And hence when they go to banks, banks do not want to lend to them. And so the whole idea is the credit guarantee fund would be able to provide guarantees for the youth entrepreneurs to actually get local currency liquidity. Now, a lot of us have older children who are trying to be entrepreneurs, but they've never run a business before, so they need to have a great amount of capacity building. So those would be the series of funds. And what we're doing is following the youth into the sectors that they actually enjoy and want to develop business. So it's going to be agriculture, where we see a lot of youth coming, not on the farm production, but we see them really coming in terms of post-harvest, reducing post-harvest losses, processing, logistics, etc. We also see opportunities in the creative industries. This is a big area for youth. And then, of course, tech and tech-enabled businesses, whether it's agtech, fintech, etc. So those are the sectors the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks will focus on. We have board approval for 4 of them. The first was in Liberia, so it goes to show you that we're taking risks. The second was in Nigeria. We also have done Ethiopia and Cote d'Ivoire. We have a pipeline, in Tunisia, also in Kenya and in Tanzania. We're also focusing on implementation to really deliver what was designed, and implementation is really a big focus for us. And so, once again, for me, this is an opportunity to marry passion with innovation, because supporting youth entrepreneurs is really what brings us to life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Solomon Quena. Just like Dr. Adeshina, I'm going to deduct an extra 3 minutes from your time next year. I'm going to come next to Nena Nwabufo. There's several parts of the continent, in spite of a lot of progress, development, and growth, there are many nations and many regions that are engulfed in conflict, instability, and rising even so. My question to you is, and this is a question that I believe is quite appropriate for you, given your previous portfolio, even as Director General, prior to becoming a Vice President, how has the bank adapted its approach in terms of financing, delivering, partnerships to address the continent's fragility challenges? Again, as Dr. Adeshina says, we don't have a choice. Even in regions and countries where there is conflict, we have an obligation to support our member countries. How are we doing this?
Yeah, thank you. Like you said, we are facing a lot of challenges, conflicts, security issues, climate change issues that we are dabbling with our regional member countries. Almost every African today live either in a conflict area or close to a conflict area. In the past, we used to see conflicts as you know, this country is in conflict. But today you have countries that appear stable, but they still have pockets of conflict and fragility in certain parts. So it's something that is growing. As a matter of fact, currently about 40 million Africans are displaced. And these conflicts actually cost Africa almost about $450 billion every year, which is about 9% of our GDP. So it's not a small issue, it's a very big issue. And therefore, this kind of challenge requires some holistic, homegrown, innovative ways to manage them and to integrate the peace, the security, the development, and the resilience aspect. And just because you gave us 2 minutes, and I start counting my 2 minutes now, is that we are trying to address these challenges, to be brief, in three ways. One is that we still, despite the conflict, we sustain engagement. There is no country that has been through a conflict in Africa that has come out and one thing they do is always commend the African Development Bank for being there. Today in Sudan, we are very active in Sudan. With the emergency food production facility, we had provided about $76 million for the World Food Program to help Sudan ramp up their wheat production facility. Now the war came. And despite that war in 2022-2023, that project actually grew 50% of the wheat that they had in Sudan. In 2023-2024, that project also provided 85% of the wheat that they had in Sudan. But one thing is not just that initial. Last year, we approved additional funding of about $110 million to continue to support that project. And what we've seen is that despite the conflict in Sudan, is that their wheat production has increased from 2.5 tons per hectare to about 3.6. Because that project has provided them with better quality seeds, it's provided them with fertilizer, and as a result of, as a matter of fact, the fertilizer that project provided in Sudan resulted in the drop in the price of fertilizer in Sudan. So we remain engaged. That is one way to be, because we are number one partners for countries in Africa. So even in the crisis and conflict situation, we always remain engaged. The second thing we do is we try to identify and prevent some of these conflicts before they start. And sometimes, yes, even when a country has gone into full conflict, you find that there is a lot of refugee population moving into neighboring countries. And we identify the conflict between the host communities and the refugees as a hotspot. So most times we move in to provide some kind of funding to support both the refugees and the host communities, not just necessarily to provide them with basic, but maybe support them in trade, maybe enhance their livelihood, their means of livelihood. And we did that with Sudan, with South Sudan, Chad, and other neighboring countries where we had a lot of the refugees. We are even with the problem in Eastern Congo today. Our teams have visited Congo, they've visited Burundi, they've visited some of the neighboring countries to see how we can support them. Lastly, we need a strategic partnership. So we are partnering in some of the managing these situations with organizations like the African Union, the regional organizations. We are partnering with the UN agencies because the UN, they have offices in very remote areas, and therefore we can reach many more people through them. Most importantly, we're also partnering with specialized agencies like Interpeace, so that we can also, through the Interpeace, do some peace financing. We are also partnering with the International Committee of the Red Cross, because they are known as being neutral in conflict situations. So they are able to work in a place like Sudan. They are able to work in areas where you have the two warring parties, because they are not seen. So we have been able to work with them in order for them to go in and help some of these people in crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nena Nwabufo. I know that it's tough fitting your responses into the time limit, and again, I cannot fault you. What has been obvious throughout our session this evening is not just the excitement about the work that each one of you do, but it's the passion that you bring to that work, and it shows. So I just want to say big congratulations to you here. Beth, I'm going to come to you next with my last question before I hand over to the SVP for final comments. My question to you is, AFAWA, in a relatively short period of time, AFAWA, the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, has posted some very, very impressive results in terms of its support for women-owned businesses on the continent, SMEs. And I believe last year was a record-breaking number with the amount of approvals that you had. Share a little bit with us about AFAWA in general, as well as the impact that it's had so far and what the way forward is. In 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Victor, and I'm really excited to talk about AFAWA. One of my very first field trips after I came to the African Development Bank was to Senegal, and I met a woman named Christine Ngiri, and she told me the story of when she wanted to start a business. She went to a loan officer in a bank and filled out her application and met with the loan officer who rejected her application. She went to the next bank, and the loan officer, also a man, rejected her application. Third, fourth bank. The fourth bank, she filled out her application, met with the loan officer who said, you're young and you're pretty. Why don't you just get a husband? So that humiliation, that inability for, bright entrepreneurs with ideas, energy, and creativity who want to start their businesses, their inability to access finance because they're women is the sort of spirit behind AFAWA and the vision of President Adesina's initiative that really works on 3 different levels. One is to help make women entrepreneurs, women SMEs bankable. A lot of these women are in the informal sector and haven't accessed the formal sector. How do we help them build the skills that they need and make the connections so that they can access finance through the formal sector? The second is, how do we work with banks to make them womenable? Do they have the types of products that women need and want? Do they have the types of loan collateral that women need and want, et cetera? And then we come in with guarantees to help support them extend their loans to women and really learn that women SMEs are actually very good business for the bank going forward. So again, with this premise, we also work on policies within countries to try to extend women's banking and really make the environment favorable. I think the numbers, President Adesina said them very eloquently, but they're too amazing not to repeat again here. Again, this has been a vision of President Adesina's for quite some time, but actually the signed paperwork to get it moving only really started 3 years ago. And in that time, we have approved $2.4 billion in lending to women-owned SMEs, and half of that has actually reached the hands of women-owned SMEs so they can grow their businesses.
Thank you very much.
So that's really financing at scale over a very, very quick period of time. Again, we've been able to support 24,000 women-owned SMEs, working with 185 financial institutions in 44 countries across the continent. Again, impact at scale, and we are only just getting started. I wanted to give an example of one of these entrepreneurs. So Elizabeth Tano, who owns and runs a coffee roasting company here in Abidjan, she is one of the beneficiaries of an AFAWA-backed financing. She got $40,000, and this is after several attempts to gain financing so she could grow her business. She had a lot of demand from customers, but wasn't able to scale up production to meet that until she got this AFAWA-backed loan. She was able to increase her revenues in the next year by 20%, increase her staffing by 30%. And when I met her, she said, when women are determined, when they set their minds to something, they give it their all. And that's what I saw from Elizabeth Tano and the women that we're supporting, and really looking forward, I think, to continue to scale dramatically this effort to get to really normalize banks lending to women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beth Dunford.
Oh, sorry, just we're having a session on AFAWA tomorrow at 4 p.m., and I hope that you all will come. You'll meet a lot of entrepreneurs there, a lot of financial institutions who are doing really creative things to reach women at scale. Thank you.
A very nice plug there. I actually said you were the last question, but actually the chief economist and the vice president ECVP, Kevin Urama, you have the last question. I'm just a little bit curious here. Assuming you had the opportunity to speak to a gathering of heads of state in Africa today, given the very complex geopolitical environment in which we now find ourselves and the, again, global headwinds in trade and aid, what are the three most important things you'll tell them to pay attention to? In 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Victor, for that question. I think I would just tell them, number one, to think home and ensure that they can make Africa's capital work for Africa's development. And there is a slew or toolkit of key actions that can be taken to do that in the just launched African Economic Outlook report of today. You know, we use our African Economic Outlook report to try and paint the picture for Africa and Africa's development partners on what the landscape is like and what are the challenges we need to address and how we need to address them. And paying attention to those reports will help quite a lot in addressing a number of Africa's challenges. Just for example, we had the 2027 report on debt dynamics on the continent, and from that, under the leadership of President Adesina, came the Debt Action Plan that was approved by the African Development Bank Board of Directors, the Public Financial Management Academy that has now graduated 52 public officials in training on all forms of aspects of public financial management from 26 countries, and now an ongoing training of 600 of such officials. And then we're seeing results, as I keep mentioning, in terms of how we invest in knowledge and knowledge for development. But again, we apply the knowledge in our country diagnostic notes to help ensuring that the soft skills, the soft infrastructure helps the hard infrastructure investments that we've heard from all our vice presidents here to work better for development in Africa in terms of improving the productivity of infrastructure investments on the continent. Thank you.
Kevin Urama, thank you very much. Can you give a very, very warm round of applause and appreciation to our distinguished panelists this evening who have done justice to our panel discussion. Thank you very much for your time, for your thoughts, as well as your many valuable contributions. At this point, we are going to call on the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, to come to the platform to help unveil the 2025 African Development Effectiveness Report. Joining him on stage, we'll have our dear brother Amon Nzeyimana. Please come on stage with the President and let's do the unveiling, after which we'll bring this event to a close, because as we all know, feeding Africa is one of our responsibilities. Olivier and the rest of the team, please come on stage.
Well, you know, let me, is it working? Yeah. Well, first and foremost, let me thank everybody for coming tonight for this particular African Development Effectiveness Review, but also to actually being here to join us as you listen to our vice presidents, because at the end of the day, we have a lot of work that we do, and these are the folks that actually do it. I'm sure that you agree with me that we have here highly knowledgeable people, highly passionate people, highly dynamic people, highly competent people, and who are relentless in making sure that we deliver for Africa, and they do it every single day, from the right over there in terms of knowledge products to the guy I changed from actually not doing any Mickey Mouse stuff, my vice president for private sector, all the work that he talked about, Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank. In fact, I remember the day that we were talking about the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank. I invited the Vice President, Quena, to my house, and there's a chair I actually sit the Vice President's in when it's a grilling chair. And he sat over there, and I said, Vice President, all these things about market failure, institutional failures, and all that, how are we going to fix it? I said, we need a Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank. He said, Mr. President, if you can tell me where one country in the world where they've done it, maybe then we'll look at it. I said, which country in the world has 462 million people below the ages of 35? He said, which region? He said, Africa. I said, so go do it. And so I'm so proud of what he's doing. I'm also so proud of the work that Kevin Orama is doing. Sorry I couldn't join you for your event. But as I said, I am so proud that Africa today, African Development Bank, produces its own knowledge products that gives us a distinct voice, that gives us analytical products, policy guidance for countries that are endogenous to Africa, and also build the capacity of our institutions. And I want to thank Vice President that is on-grid and off-grid, Vice President of Power and Electricity, Vice President Kariki. Thank you for the great work that you're doing and your leadership on the Mission 300, working together with the World Bank, and all the other things that you do. Victor was asking you questions about the Energy Regulatory Index and all the other things that you and your fantastic teams do. So thank you. But of course, to Beth, she just has a magical thing about, I don't know how she's able to do all these things at the same time, from nutrition to water, to agriculture, to human capital, skills, employment, everything like that. I mean, just say hi, she's good. Gender and so on, and civil society, yes, guys, yeah. But I think the point I just want to make here is, today, the African Development Bank is the leader globally when it comes to agriculture. And so thank you to you and your team for the great work that you're doing. And to Nena Nwabufo, as she was going through all our numbers, and I was saying that, well, that's right, and in terms of regional integration, in terms of size of our portfolio, we have director generals here, we have country managers here that do all that work. We are close on the ground. We decentralize the bank. We are there. We are trusted on the ground by the countries, and I want to thank you and your teams for all you do in scaling up the portfolio, as you said, but most importantly, achieving those impacts and having quality portfolio. So thank you very much, Nena, to you and your team. To Asatu, how did you say about Asatu? She does it with a swag. Okay, all right. She does it with a swag, whether it is leading our work on financial innovations for us, on the hybrid capital, whether it is telling us how we can have family and friends. We also have family and friends hybrid capital that she's working on, and several other securitization things that we are doing, as well as helping us with SDR, rechanneling, and all of that. Please give it up to Asatu and our team for the fantastic job that they do. Of course, the Africa Investment Forum is in our shop. Where's Max, the Maximizer? He's a guy that we have here called Max. Yeah, you can stand up. Yeah, Max Maximizer. Yeah, nobody actually calls themselves Minimizer. So, but I think, I'll come back to you last, Vice President, to Simon Mizrahi, who actually helps us a lot in terms of our corporate services, in terms of our digitalization of the bank, and helping us make sure an agile institution that is able to use knowledge, data, analytics to inform our decision making. So thank you for helping us as we build a knowledge bank. To Aman, Aman is our eagle. He has eagle eyes. There is no number that you want to say. If Aman has not checked that number, don't try it. He and Mizrahi worked together when Mizrahi was director of that thing, and they created something called, what's that map called? Map Africa. You can point to it. You can literally touch every single project that we have. And we are very rigorous in terms of monitoring and evaluation, data collection. A lot of that will be improved when we actually have the AI application at the bank, which we are working on, and so on. So, sorry, what's it? Olivier, yes. Oh, okay, come here. No, I haven't given you a high five, that's why. Yeah. So, thank you very much, Olivier, for running the show. Great job. I think I've done all of that. And now let me come to Victor Oladokun. Thank you very much for a fantastic job always, for insightful questions, for your generosity on your time, and you knew exactly how to balance it very, very well. But you are such a first-rate, world-class person when it comes to communication. I'm so proud of you. Thank you very much. And, of course, to my senior vice president, Milo, you know, she is very, very smart. She's very, very dynamic. She has strength. And even she has strength enough to push the president back a couple of times. And I just want to say that she provides outstanding leadership, guidance for all the teams here. We are like an orchestra in which we all play various roles. But I hope the results and things that you've had tonight have shown you as shareholders that you are investing in the right people first. Or you are investing in a team. That you're investing in people who understand the continent. You're investing in people that have a passion and drive for the continent. These people, they work literally every single day with their teams and staff to make sure that we can deliver. But most importantly, that you feel that the monies you are putting at the African Development Bank is put to great use, which is to actually deliver the impact in the lives of people. We are Africa's solutions bank. And these guys here and their team are the solution providers. I couldn't be prouder of you. Thank you very much for every single thing that you are doing. Now, it now gives me great pleasure to hold this up to you, the Annual Development Effectiveness Review Report for 2025 to be launched. I now pronounce that launched. Yeah. So, okay, let's get forward a bit, and then we can, yeah. All right. Okay, hold it up. Don't cover your faces, though. Okay. Yeah. All right. There we go. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let me remind you, please, we have a dinner just actually starting right now. You want to announce that for people? You have a dinner that's already
in progress.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for coming out this evening. Dinner is served. If you have an invitation, you know where that is. Thank you once again for coming tonight.